Hello everyone, good afternoon. My name is Nicole Galacci and I am hosting today's Careers Now mentorship session. The session today is on sales and marketing career paths, and we have Sabrina and Anil here to speak with you shortly. So just briefly, Careers Now is Food and Beverage Ontario's workforce development initiative for Ontario's food and beverage processing industry. The program was essentially launched to connect job seekers to employers in Ontario's food and beverage industry. We've been offering things like these mentorship sessions, 12 in total. This is actually our last one today. And we're also offering job fairs. We have 2 more coming up, March 1st and March 8th. And you can meet a dozen employers at these fairs and obviously connect and start your career path there. We also offer free training, essential skills training. And if you look in the chat in a few minutes, you'll see the link to create your profile on Careers Now Job Seeker. And you can find out about all these events and certainly register for these events and obviously your skills training. So each speaker will take about 10 minutes to talk about their career path, literally from where they started to present day, and we'll let them both speak first, and then I've got some questions, but if you do have questions, feel free to put them in the chat and I will go ahead and ask them afterwards. So Sabrina, if you'd like to go ahead.
Sure, can everyone hear me? Thumbs up, we're good? Okay, hi everybody. My name is Sabrina Caruso. I'm currently the lead marketing manager at a company called Jan K Overwheel. And I'm gonna guess that no one has heard of this company, but you probably have heard about the brands. And that is something as a marketing student or graduate that you're used to doing and you'll be continuing to do, which is research. So that is me today. I'm gonna share with you a little bit about my background. So I'm a university grad. I don't have my master's. I really don't like school, but I've been successful in my career. And a large part has to do with that is passion and willing to do the work. And that's something that I'm gonna definitely suggest to you, is that whatever you choose to do in your path, is be passionate about it. It's a long road ahead and you need to have fun. So when things get tough and you're gonna be working long days and so forth, and you have your life and everything kind of comes together, if you're not gonna be passionate about what you're doing, you're just not gonna have some fun. So that's the biggest thing that I can ever say to you. So when you're gonna be choosing your path, which is very important, choosing your path of your field is something that I'm going to suggest you stick to it. So what I say by that is, if you're going to stick in food, if you're going to choose food, not to say that you can't change, by all means, it's going to help you, because when I'm hiring someone and I'm looking at the resume, I want to see that, they've worked a variety of different companies. That's fine. But if they have a continuous build from one industry, that just shows to me that they've been able to build on their experiences. So, but if you were, in makeup in 1 year, and then food in the next, and then technology in the next, I would be skeptical of hiring someone. That being said, please jump around from company to company, not every year, not every 6 months, because we do look at that when we hire you. But that's really how you're going to make some money. If you're going to be staying too long term, especially in the beginning of your career, that's not where you're going to be getting big bumps. I experienced that, is that, staying in a company for too long. And then I realized, what, if I stuck around for a couple of years and then advanced to another company, the gap in my pay was that much more substantial, because who's getting who? We want to do what we do and we love it, but we're here for the money as well. And, and that's not a bad word. Money is definitely not a bad word. So for my career, I started from school. I wasn't really sure what I really wanted to do. So once I figured it out and I wanted to be in marketing, I stayed focused. I figured out my plan of how to get there. I got hired as an APM, as assistant product manager, and I wasn't going to be picky, right? At that point, I wanted to to landing and get a job. And I knew I wanted food. My parents both each had their own businesses in food. I wrote, I heard always at the dinner table that, hey, even in a recession, people need to eat. So I figured food was a good place. I have worked in nutraceuticals. I got to say, I didn't really like it too much. I just think marketing food is really fun. And I love food, so why not? So got hired at a food service company, and that started off in a cup company that made cups for like Tim Hortons, McDonald's, and so forth. And that was really fun. But then I realized after that, that my goal was I wanted to be, make a TV commercial. So if I was in food service, I now had to get into a retail job. How was I going to do that? So my plan was get into another company that had both a food service arm and a retail arm. So consumer packaged goods. And that's exactly what I did. So I got applied at Robin Hood Multi-Foods. I started off in their food service, did such a great job in my presentations. By the way, that is a huge part of our job, is doing presentations to 2 people, to 10 people, to 50 people, to your colleagues, and to the CEO of the company. So I'm not saying that you need to be perfect at it in the beginning, but if that is something that you know that you're not going to like, something to think about, let's just put it that way. So anyways, I got over to the retail side, and that's when I started off on Golden Temple brand, got promoted, and then now I'm on Bix Pickles. So now I did my first radio spot, and it was just a hoot. It was a lot of fun, but not exactly what I thought it was. So anyways, we got acquired. Then I got on to work on Smuckers. I hope everyone has eaten jam, and Smuckers is a very good jam. So that was my first TV spot that I did. Again, had a lot of fun, learned a lot. It was not what I wanted. And that's when I'm also realizing, so from Robin Hood to Smuckers, there's a cultural shift, and I'm starting to pay more attention to the culture of the company. So there's a lot of things that you're going to choose, right? It's like, okay, well, who's paying and how much are you going to pay me? It's the job that you're looking for. But what I've realized also is culture has been a huge part of companies that I've chosen for my career, and that has gotten me so far. So some people are going to want the top tier companies, and it's fantastic, good for you. But I found that the cultures have been very different than for maybe smaller companies. So after Smuckers, I decided I wanted to go back to companies that had maybe were not publicly traded, a little bit smaller. So then that's when I chose to go to Swiss Herbal Remedies, and I worked on nutraceuticals for 8 years. That was a lot of fun. Not as deep pockets as Smuckers. So every choice that you make, right, there's going to be pros and cons to it. And then I realized I missed food too much. So then I was just at Mother Parker's, and I was on a private label. So everyone, really thinks, and that's been, I don't know how Anil's going to feel about this, but my biggest correction when people say, what do you do? And I say marketing. Oh, you do advertising? And I'm like, that's 1/10 of my job. In marketer, you're running a business. So if you do not have to be loud spoken, but you cannot be shy. You're running a business. Your job is never done, essentially, because there's always room for improvement. There's a more opportunity for growth. And if your trajectory is not going there, you're going to find the growth. But that being said, it's all baby steps. And I know that, I'm speaking to students right now or graduates, and it's just figuring it out of what you really want to do and doing your research. Please, when you interview, can you please do research on the company? The least you can do is go into their digital platforms and give a peek of seeing what they've done. I've done quite a few interviews, and it's when, someone admitted to me that they hadn't even gone on our website. It was like, I'm done. Like, how, Mike, you're selling me that you're going to be passionate about working for the job. You're up against so many people. And if there's no passion there, but you're telling me there's passion, something's missing. So please do your homework. Another thing is when you're interviewing, I don't care if you think this is old school or not, please follow up. I don't care if it's an email, a phone call, do it on LinkedIn. I don't care where you're going to do it, but definitely make sure that you're sending it to the person who you interview with directly. and saying thank you and I appreciate your time and so forth. Just looking at other things on the list.
I was going to interject there that while you're thinking of the next thing, pressure is on for sales and marketing candidates, because every other, I think, function can be forgiven for not following up. But if you're in sales and your job is going to be to sell to someone, and you can't sell yourself and get the job by following up and professional persistence, I think that speaks volumes. As a recruiter, whenever I applied for a salesperson, it's like, there's some basics here, and if you're not doing it, how are you going to be good at the job? So I'm glad you mentioned that, and I'll let you carry on now.
Yeah. And this is where, speaking of when you're interviewing, right, you have to break through the clutter. Assume always that you have at least another 20 people that you're competing against. Always assume that, and always make sure that you're answering everything that they have already listed in the job description, and then go above and beyond in any way, shape, or form. Whether you're going to be showing a portfolio, whether it's something that you did at school, I don't know, just get creative. If you don't know what creative means, call some headhunters yourself. Someone's going to be always willing to just shed some knowledge. Give me a call. I'm on LinkedIn. Send me messages. I'm more than happy to share for whatever wisdom I have. More than happy to do so. When it comes to also breaking through the clutter, when you have your job, so now you're freshly hired, and it's about how you're going to learn. So I admitted to you that, school is not my top thing. I'm definitely hands-on, and I watch people. And that's how I've learned. When you're in a meeting and you're not understanding what's going on in the meeting, that's okay. What you're going to pay attention to is the people. You're going to read their body language. You're going to hear what people are saying. More importantly, what they're not saying. You're competing against your peers. And never forget, ever, that just because you're reporting to Nicole today does not mean that you will not be reporting to Anil tomorrow. Never, ever break any relationships. And if you're going to choose to do so, then make sure that you feel strongly about that, because I've worked in so many places that, today that my director was so-and-so, tomorrow someone else gets a promotion. Guess what? They just filled their spot with someone internally, and guess who your new boss is? Or the colleague that you sat to, beside yesterday is now possibly your new boss. So never underestimate who you're going to be working for. But it's not just about, kissing ass. It's about learning. And it's also about your colleagues. There's always something that you can learn from somebody. If you think that, there's nothing to learn, then we're all sadly mistaken on that one. And that's how you're going to build better business plans. That's how you're going to become a stronger marketer. Because like I said, when you're a marketer, you're running a business, you're being strategic all the time. But it's also, and I'm sure everyone in the room, even as students, is that when you're presenting, you're trying to steal time even from your teacher to get a better mark. So is it going to be you're more charismatic when you're doing a presentation, just so they can remember you when they're actually grading you? Is no different than when you're doing a presentation, whether you're launching a product or whether you're presenting your business plans. So again, you don't have to have all the theatrics. You don't have to be loud spoken, but you definitely cannot be shy in this role. So I've learned this. I'll never forget Charlie Coots. He was my first vice president. I had to do my first presentation. We were 50 people in the audience, and I was literally shaking. Like, I'm not joking. When I said I was shaking, I was shaking. He took me aside, and this is the best advice that he ever gave me, that anyone has ever given me. And he said, remember, Sabrina, he said, you know this material better than anybody else. He said, you think that they know it? He goes, but they don't. He goes, it's you. He said, so don't worry about it. Just go out there and do your best. I swear to you, I rocked that. And that's how I got my first promotion. And that's how I made from food service. And I had gone over to retail. So own it, be confident in what you're doing. You make a mistake, who cares? It's about moving forward. Everyone makes mistakes. Don't get stuck in that. Just keep on moving forward. And then learn from it, but don't beat yourself up over it. we've all been there. That's all I got.
That's great advice. And it's not just for students and grads. You know, I'm listening thinking, you're so right. Like, you know, it doesn't even matter at what point in your career, these are great refreshers, right? And
keep on moving, keep on moving.
Yeah, no kidding. I've got a bunch of questions from what you said that, you know, that I'd like to ask, but let's go to Anil next, and then we can have a discussion.
Well, thank you, Nicole, and good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you this afternoon. And I guess the theme for my discussion is to be open and be willing to take chances, and opportunities will come knocking on your door. Don't be afraid to step outside of your comfort zone. My career progression to this moment and to this role that I'm currently in as the customer development manager for US sales for Trophy Foods took a while to get here and took me down several paths that I didn't think were gonna lead to this point where I am today. Like many young graduates, I found myself unemployed after finishing university. But what that did was it gave me a chance to really reflect back on the things that I learned at and identified a new way of trying to look for a job. Primarily, the first job I got in the government was through social media. I wasn't afraid to step outside of the conventional methods of finding a job by posting applications or looking on LinkedIn or job boards. I actually went on Twitter. I looked at people who had similar interests to me. I started having conversations with them. I wasn't afraid to put myself out there and to let them know that I needed an opportunity. And what that led to was my first job working for the federal government. I was on Parliament Hill working as a member's assistant, and that was one of the greatest opportunities that I've had. From there, I made a move over to retail banking. In retail banking, I got to deal with customers one-on-one. I got to understand what motivated them, what led them to do the things that they did. I got to understand what made them feel the way they felt. And by doing that, I was able to build plans and solutions to meet their financial goals. From there, I made another pivot to a completely unrelated career field, and that was in retail. I ended up working for Walmart at their head office, first in their e-com department, then in global sourcing, and finally in their food services desk. There, I dealt with products that had a finite shelf life, that needed to be sold within 30 days, that needed to be marketed, and that needed to be advertised to consumers to ensure that consumption was made and we didn't suffer a loss. And finally, from there, I made one more move before entering the food service industry, and that was the Shoppers Drug Mart. I worked with directors, I worked with vice presidents. I went into some uncomfortable situations because I didn't think at that time I was prepared, all the while not noticing that the opportunities that I had all the way and all along were actually preparing me to do the job that I was hired for. I started working in areas that were outside of what I was supposed to be doing, looking at planograms, store layouts, customer traffic, identifying stores that we should do promotions in, and stores that we should avoid altogether because the customer traffic wasn't good. And then this opportunity came to enter the food service industry. This was through a recruiter on LinkedIn, and it was marketed to me as an interesting opportunity to grow on what I've already established. I didn't understand it at that time, but truly the recruiter saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. I was hired at Trophy Foods initially as a business manager. What that role entailed was me dealing externally with various retailers, being the face of the company, speaking to them and having them believe in the vision and in the merchandising strategy that we were willing to put forward. And then internally, across cross-functional teams, getting visibility on product development, on research and development, looking at finance, looking at procurement, understanding why one delay on a train line can start off a cataclysmic event that leads to a delay on the shelf. Understanding and having this visibility to various departments helped me to grow already established customers, and that led to my promotion where I am today as the customer development manager for US retail. You see, the Canadian retail market is so saturated. There are so many players in a market that only has a handful of retailers. But in the US, that's new ground. That is new opportunity. And that's what my job and what I am tasked to do, find that opportunity. Again, stepping outside of my comfort zone, taking unconventional methods of meeting people and using those little conversations that we have to end up driving a business interaction and transaction. In sales, there are many opportunities and you're never really limited to what you can do. Titles don't really mean much as long as you're willing to step outside of your comfort zone and you're willing to stand on what you believe on. What Sabrina said, you know this information, you own this information. So be confident in what you do, step outside, and you will have success. So if I were to give my little piece of advice to new graduates today that are looking for a job in sales and marketing, again, be open to the opportunities that come your way and don't be afraid to step outside your comfort zone. It's worked for me.
That's awesome. I have a bunch of questions. In terms of presenting, like I, for one, I'm okay now. I'm at a point in my life where I've had to do it throughout my career, but it's been under duress. Like I would be the person that, who's going to present the questions, the answers to those questions in a big setting. And I would be out the door like, oh, I have to go to the washroom. Like I would do anything to avoid public speaking. And I still don't love it. I have to admit, it's not my favorite thing, but it's happened, the more you could progress in your career, you find that you have to do it. What would be your top 3 pieces of advice to become a great, effective communicator like you both are? What are the soft skills and like real tangible things? Because I think there is a ton of advice out there, but it took me a long time to actually listen because I was like, oh, it's easy for you. You are good at it. And you don't get nervous. I go bright red and shake, like I can't get up there. So, Anil, as you just spoke, what would be sort of the 3 best pieces of advice to overcome those fears?
Yeah, this actually presenting and speaking in front of a large group of people is not something that comes to me easily either. Growing up, I actually dealt with a stutter and a tied tongue, which is something that has limited my communication for many years. And over time, I took the steps to hone in and to develop my public speaking and even speaking in a regular setting. My top 3 tips for public speaking is number 1, be confident in what you're saying. You know the information, whether you're speaking about yourself, you're speaking about a product that you're trying to sell, or you're speaking about the company. You know the information. They've come to you because they trust you. So be confident in what you're doing. The second thing is just slow down. People tend to speak really fast when they get nervous. And in doing that, you could sometimes miss the whole key, what you're trying to deliver. So taking it nice and slow, breathing, and delivering the message is going to help communicate. And then number 3, just think of everyone as friends. You don't get nervous talking to your friends because they're your friends. They support you. So there's no need to get nervous when you're speaking. You're confident in yourself. You know what you're doing. And at the end of the day, people will still like you for who you are. So that's my top 3 tips.
Sabrina?
Mine would be know your material. If you I'm comfortable now, but it's taken many, many years and many, many presentations to get where you are. So like Anil said, like it just didn't come easy to me, a lot of hard work. So I literally had every slide memorized in each presentation, and I would make up my speeches nights before, not the night before, nights before. So this way, at the end of the day, you already knew your material. So once you got up there, if you just had to deal with stage fright now, okay, so now you just have to deal with that. At least you have everything ready to go. Again, if you're still kind of like nervous, people say, look at the back of the wall, don't make eye contact. I always felt that being very cold for myself. So I like to make eye contact. but make eye contact to people that you know are kind, because then they will relax you, because there's nothing worse than looking at someone who's just stone cold in their eyes. It's not very comforting. So look for people who, you know, that will give you that nod, just like Nicole's doing right now, right? Giving that nod of encouragement. And just keep going. If you muffed up, it's okay. Just keep going. People will forget in 2 seconds flat, right? Everyone's looking at their watches. They're looking at their phones. Don't worry about it. You're going to be the hardest person of judging. So be kind to yourself and just keep on moving on. And then if you're starting to get comfortable, because my first 3 minutes, I'm the worst. And then after that, I start to get comfortable. If you're, you know, presenting on the most boring topic ever, but that's your job and you need to get it done, try and range your octaves. Never try and be monotone if you can, but by all means, but try and just to be a little exciting. So then this way, if anything, you'll just keep capturing people with your voice.
That's great advice. And truly, for any point in your career, because I mean, I feel like you've hit the nail on the head in terms of how to better yourself, but it's not just when you're first starting out. Like, you're an eternal student. I know I am, always looking to learn and figure things out. So this kind of leads me on to my next question around interviewing. So it's slightly different. You're not presenting per se, but you kind of are. You know, it's an audience of 1 or 2, or maybe a panel. What are the best questions? What would you tell students and grads are the questions that have really kind of, you're like, that's awesome. Like, I wouldn't have thought of that. Like, perhaps you mentioned, Sabrina, you've been interviewing recently. What would you tell students to ask you, or grads to ask you when they're looking for their first job?
For them to ask me. I just had some really good questions I've never been asked before. It was about my personal development. So questions that you've been asking me today. I've been, you know, working for a lot of years, and it was the first time that anyone had asked about how did I progress to where I am today. What was suggested of them today of how I can get to be like sitting in my seat. And it was more or less like my journey. So all the questions and everything I've spoke about today, no one had asked me that. Was another interesting question that I got asked first time in this role today. My vice president, sales and marketing, he was the first person to ever ask me, tell me, Sabrina, about your personality. Who is Sabrina outside of work? Do you believe I've been working for over 25 years and no one ever cared to even ask that? And at the end of the day, we're spending 8 to 10 hours with each other. It's like, you want to know the person that you're hiring outside of, you know, who you are and who you're working with. Speaking of working with, I worked with Daryl Rowe from Mother Parkers just when I came here. So tell him Sabrina Caruso says hello. And that's another thing. It's a small world. As you get older, it's smaller world, small world. Yeah. So Daryl Rowe used to be our chief sales officer at the company that I was at before. And now he's the head honcho at Trophy Foods where Anil is. So yeah, he has a following. That's another thing, is someone like Daryl Rowe, people will literally go to that company just because of Daryl and the following that he has. That is such a leader that gentleman has, that, you know, we all hope to be one day. So Anil, you're very lucky to be working with him.
Thank you.
Anil, do you want to add on to that?
Yeah, no, I love the questions Sabrina had brought up about your personality. I do agree. You're spending 8 hours with these people 5 days a week. So I want to know a little bit about you. What drives you? What motivates you to do your best? For me, when I'm hiring and when I've been interviewed, one of the questions I like to ask is, from their perspective, what does success look like? Tell me what success looks like. Because what you're doing is you're stripping away all the words on the job posting, all the fancy qualifications, everything that you know are buzzwords or key things that makes the software pick you up. You're stripping all that away, and you're asking the person that you're working with, how do I hone my skills that obviously qualify me for this job, and how do I deliver to make sure that I'm hitting specific goals? Tell me what success will look like a month into this role, 3 months into this role. How do I continue to progress in this position? Those are questions I love asking, because what it does is it starts to show that person is actually thinking about how not only can they get this job, but how they can excel in this job, how they can use this job and its functions to help drive our company forward. So that's just one more question I would add onto what Sabrina said.
One of the questions I get asked a lot from students, in fact, the last session that we did was on communications, and my son's going into that kind of field. And he's still at Mac right now. But I think it's quite daunting to decide what career path to go on. And I think, in our position, we can say, you don't really know what you don't know. And you end up in your first job, and that leads to your second job and your third, and so on and so forth. And your career kind of finds you. But I think it can be really daunting for new grads. So the question my son asked me to ask every time is, what do you do in a day? Like, what does your day look like? Like, break it down. Like, rather than the big scary job description, you grab your coffee, you sit down at your desk. What happens next?
It's hard to say. No day is the same. Specifically in sales, one day I could be totally occupied by product development. New item that we made doesn't hit all the specs, or it's hit all the specs and we're all excited and we want to sell it to everyone and a grandmother. The other day it could be a shipping issue. The other day it could be an invoicing issue in finance. The other day somebody doesn't like the way you looked at them on the road, and then that becomes an issue. So every day is different in sales. There isn't one specific day. But again, once you have a full understanding and appreciation for what your job is and what your function is, and you sort of keep that sort of right in front of you, no matter what the noise is coming in, you'll be able to continue to progress towards your ultimate goal, whether that is acquiring a new customer, launching a new product. Staying focused is part of the success in this role. Sabrina,
you want to describe your day?
Yeah, it's nuts. That's why I'm telling you, when you really want to love what you're doing, it all starts with a timeline, right? And you have your business plan, so you know what your goals are, and you know what you need to achieve, and you work everything backwards. And I could never live without my calendar. I'm sure we all can't. But it's all about knowing and you're hitting your deadline and moving everything backwards. And always assume that whatever you plan to get done is not going to happen. So always leave yourself time to get some work done, and just literally be honest with yourself and leave some buffer that you're always going to have something dropping on your plate that you need to fix. Because if you're running your business, you need to make sure that everything's moving very well. Nothing is not your responsibility when it comes to marketing. By all means, you don't have to touch and do everything, but you're managing people who do not report into you. So you still need to be a leader, even though you're not their boss. So prepare for anything. And then, you know what, if you had nothing fall on your plate, no surprises that day, say thank you to whoever you believe in. and that, because that doesn't happen often. So you need to laugh. You really need to just enjoy what you do. Hopefully you're going to like people that you work with. If not, I don't know, figure it out and just motivate yourself each day. But yeah, it's fun. I like it.
So that's a great segue into the industry itself, because obviously this CareersNOW program was introduced because of the labor crisis we're in, certainly due to the pandemic. But even prior to that, with food grads, I started that because I would be interviewing people, and I found it curious, more experienced people, that they zigged and they zagged and they ended up in food. And it was kind of like, interesting to me that it's something we do at least 3 times a day. We all know about food. People like to cook, regardless of your entry point. There is kind of something for everybody in the industry, yet it's not one that's top of mind when people are at school. And I think that the conversation needs to get better at school to talk about food and beverage production as a place to carve out a career. Once you're in it, that was the other interesting thing too. Once you are in, people don't leave. And I like what you mentioned earlier, Sabrina, about showing that commitment to the industry too, like that you grow. But from I'm a headhunter as well. From that perspective, I always look for somebody that's in the industry. Very rarely do I look outside of the industry, because you need that experience. So what would you say are the biggest misconceptions about the food and beverage industry? I mean, we battle with so many other industries in terms of competition for talent, especially young people. So how would you entice, the next generation to explore careers, if it is in sales and marketing, or really any function that, department within the company, so to speak? If you've got a finance background or an engineering background, why work in food?
Would you
Go
like
ahead,
to
Serena.
answer?
Yeah,
Oh,
go
yeah.
ahead.
Well, now is a perfect time. It's you never know what you're going to be dealing with globally, what's going to be happening. You always can count that there's going to be a recession while you're going to be in the workplace at least once. And at the end of the day, like my parents said, everyone still needs to eat even when they're in a recession. So your product is always going to need to be consumed in one way, shape, or form, hopefully. I really don't know what the misconceptions are about food right now. I really don't know how it's not top of mind, because we're all doing our own grocery shopping. We all have our favorite brands. So sorry, I don't know how else to shape the answer to this one.
No, I mean, I think that's good feedback. I think people look at it as hairnets and factories and depressing. And
oh yeah, no, it's so much fun. So think about, how about this? The next time you go grocery shopping, really pay attention to the product, and as a marketer or as a salesperson, because you know what, we're joined to the hips. We're husband and wife. We are cousins. We can't do anything without each other. So have respect for our comrades, whether you're in marketing and vice versa. As I'm sure Neil has heard, or maybe he's done it himself, you can be the best marketer if you've been in sales, and you can be the best salesperson if you've done marketing. Because like I said, you can't have each other. You can't accomplish one without the other. Let's just put it that way. So as a marketer in food, I can never look at TV commercials. I can never look at ads the same way, because I'm always dissecting what they've done. It's not, I just can't sit back and just enjoy it anymore. But look at the packaging, and there's only so many things that you can say on a food label, because your architecture is just only so large. So you have to know your insights when you're reading your research. And research is a lot of fun. I know that word sounds really boring, but when you've done enough of it, it's a lot of fun to now just think about how much work has been done to distill all this information and to make it land on what the final decisions were on your product name, where you put your logo. I don't know, to all that to me is just a lot of fun, because I can appreciate all the work that has been done behind the scenes. It's not just a coincidence of where your product has landed. If it's at the top shelf, it's on the bottom shelf. If it's beside one SKU versus another SKU, like this is where Neil had talked about it before, the schematics of your planogram. Everything has been fully analyzed. So nothing is a coincidence in a grocery store. So I don't know, that gets me going.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And a lot of money. There's a lot of money in food. A lot of money. Don't kid yourself. Yeah.
And Neil, you want to add on that? We'll come back.
Yeah, no, I could definitely build off of what you said, Nicola. I guess people would have the conception that food production is hairnets and factories and all that kind of stuff, but there's so much outside of just the actual production of food. I mean, in sales, had it not been for the pandemic, most of the salespeople at Trophy Foods would be flying all over North America and visiting different people and taking in different experiences. They'd be going through different stores and seeing what motivates different customers in different segments. There's so much growth within sales itself, and when you look outside of sales, whether it be finance, whether it be production, whether it be procurement, there's so much there for you to grow and you to, develop yourself. I've always said within sales, at the very least, titles don't matter. It's all about, like Nicole said, taking that research, finding that golden nugget, understanding what can work, and then running with that and making it happen. There's so much, like she said, that goes behind that product actually being on that shelf. So within food and within sales and within this industry specifically, there are not too many limiting factors. Your career can grow. You can definitely branch off into different areas that may interest you. and the door is always open for you to make those jumps.
It's great feedback. You mentioned money, and that brings me on to another misconception. I think that people think of food service, they think minimum wage. You work in food as a job that you do right out of school or while you're still in school. And obviously, as a recruiter, I know that's different. You guys work in the industry. Maybe you want to talk about that a little bit. I mean, Sabrina, you did at the beginning about how to progress, and I think I wholeheartedly agree with you to get those bumps. I've seen it as a recruiter. That's how people get those bumps. And then I talk to people that have been in the same job for, the same company, I should say, for 10, 15 years. And it's like, they aren't even aware of what their market value is now because they've been there. I'm sure employers don't want to hear that, but that is the reality of the situation. So how would you advise a new grad if they called you and said, how do I negotiate my first salary? What would your advice be, Sabrina? Maybe you go next, and then Anil.
So one thing that I just recently read was a stat on LinkedIn of how women do not negotiate as well as men do. And that was something that I had to look myself in the mirror and say, you know what? I really haven't done a good job in negotiating. It's not easy. I find it always at work, I negotiate every day. For myself, I really find it a little bit more difficult. So for all the women out there, negotiate a little bit better, a little bit harder, because someone else is doing it. So I'm not going to say negotiate just for the sake of it, because if you're going to negotiate, you need to back it up. So if you're going to be asking for more money, you have to have the reasons to do so. But just don't be shy about it either. If you feel that you've done your homework and the opening wage is not where the market value is, and if you have the experience and so forth. So as maybe as for students, maybe it's going to be a little bit harder in negotiation when it comes down to your pay. But don't forget, pay is only one layer. Then there's vacation. Vacation costs money at the end of the day. So negotiate on your vacation. Negotiate on, I don't know, days of lieu. Like get creative, but again, always do your homework and just don't look like you're asking for demands, because there's nothing worse than if you cannot back it up. Don't be negotiating right off the bat.
Yeah, it's hard being a new graduate and negotiating, specifically if your entire life up to that point has been school and you don't really have a lot of experience. But like Sabrina said, like research, understand what the market average is. If you're going to come to the negotiating table, have some evidence behind it to help, steer the conversation. Don't be afraid of it. Don't be ashamed of it. Let them know what your intentions are. They may not be able to do it this fiscal year, but maybe next fiscal year they can do it. They'll keep it in their mind. And at the end of the day, like she said, there's much more than just pay. There are benefits, there are vacations, there are other things that you can talk about as well. So maybe out of school, it's a little harder, but as you progress in your career, just don't be afraid of it. Have those conversations and just be open and honest with your employer, and they'll notice your worth.
Sorry, can I just add one little thing? Is negotiation, what I've learned along the years, it's not about like hard hitting, like stamping your hand like you just see in the movies, right? Negotiation sometimes coming across as just asking a question. So no, the person on the receiving end is not an idiot. They understand what you're doing, but it's always about how you ask the question. And it can be very soft, as saying, okay, so, I was wondering, when you have the range of, let's say they have a range, I'm just going to say from 50 to 75, put it back on them to explain to you why they're going to be offering you 55 when the range was 50 to 75. And therefore, when they tell you, well, this is a range, falls here, here, and here, we think you're in the lower end. Now, that's when you can come back with a rebuttal to say, well, actually, I'm thinking, and maybe I didn't explain this to you properly, but I have this experience. I've done this and this and this. So I'm thinking I'm maybe more in the middle range. So now you just did it very tactfully. You asked them questions, you gain clarification. So let's just say at the end of the day that you didn't get a bump in that pay range, you just got their respect 100% because you asked questions. And then this is where it's like, oh, I want that smart person on my team.
And I think, again, with sales, you're in a unique position where maybe you have to take a little bit less on the base salary, and you can negotiate your commission and, come up with something maybe a little bit different to what's on offer, but, almost coming with that confidence of, let me prove to you why you need to hire me. This is my base. This is my flex side, however that's built. And, off they go. And then the proof really becomes in the pudding, where they get to show how effective they are in their sales position. So I think that's one role that you can do that in, is a sales position. Really show your worth by the business you bring in.
Mm-hmm. Well, don't forget, in marketing, once you get to a certain level, you get bonuses as well. So there's negotiation in your bonuses too.
Yeah. What would you say, and I know we're getting close to the end, and I'm just going to, otherwise I have to keep an eye, otherwise I'll just keep asking you questions. What are the top 3 soft skills you look for sales and marketing job seekers or new grads? So soft skills is a term that's thrown around so much, and I think, young people do get confused of what that actually means, but how important they are. And I talk to hiring managers all the time that say, those are the things that you can't change. We can teach the technical pieces, we can train, but these are the soft skills I'm looking for. And then they'll list off what are the most critical. Anil, maybe you want to go ahead first. What are the soft skills that you would say are most important to be successful in, that you've found in your role?
Yeah, I think the first one is curiosity. People who are curious show a willingness to learn. So that's a huge one. Someone who can just laugh at themselves. We're all going to make mistakes. Sometimes they're big, sometimes they're small, but being able to just step back, take a breath, smile, and then move on with your life is another one. And then the only other thing that I truly cherish, and something that has helped me as well, is the ability to really just try to connect with people. We all come from different walks. We all have different motivations. You talk to somebody, you do a cold call, and they may not be having a good day, and they take it out on you, but just being able to just relate to them, relate to their current situation. Sure, the door didn't open today, but you know what? Tomorrow there might be another opportunity. And don't be afraid to, circle back if you have to. So those are my soft skills that I look for.
Oh, I'm not on mute. Conflict resolution. So when I said that, as a marketer, you're running a business, and you're running a lot of different projects, you're running, team meetings, all these people, majority of them are not going to be reporting into you. People are having bad days. And at the end of the day, you need to be able to get the most out of everybody. Everyone also has conflicting kind of like priorities, and you always want them to, to have your project on the top of their mind. And it's about calming down the situation, because there's always going to be someone who's, loud spoken, and someone wants to talk about this, but then you need to keep everyone focused. So managing a room, conflict resolution, it will help you in life, but it'll definitely help you in your job. Being passionate. I don't care what it is. Just show me that something gets you going, that there's a reason why you get up in the morning, and you're just, not robotic. You can be smart. You could be the smartest person in the class. I really don't care. If you don't have passion, then I'm going to say that there's something lacking to be part of my team, or who I want to be part of a team with. And then asking questions. It's, I don't know if it kind of like doubled on what Anil was saying, but just keep on asking questions, and don't be scared to. If anything, there's no such thing as a dumb question, because trust me, you can ask. And I do my own kind of research all the time. I will always phrase a question differently, but I'll always ask the same question 3 times in a meeting. I guarantee you, still to this day, I've been doing it for 20 years, more than 20 years, you'll always get a different answer. So that is one of my cardinal rules when I'm managing a project. Ask the question in different ways, because people understand it differently. And it also could be you, like it could be me. Maybe I'm not phrasing the question the way I think it's being received. So do it for yourself, but then also do it for everybody else. Yeah. So ask questions a lot.
Fantastic advice. I feel like you're going to see these pieces in an image that's going to be shared on social in the near future. You'll see your face. The last thing I would great advice. I guess as you were speaking, I was like, what would I answer? And again, I'm proving what I'm going to say. So when I first started out in my career, people would say listening skills are really important. I really didn't grasp that. And when you first start out, I think you are very keen to make a good impression and have a great response and have good chat and make sure that you're coming across well. And one of the things I really had to work on was my listening skills, because I wasn't listening to respond, I was listening to, as opposed to actually truly understanding what they were saying. I was more so listening and thinking about how I was going to respond. And I find that that's throughout my career, I've really tried to hone that skill, like truly listen and learn. Because if all you're doing is listening to respond, you're not taking it in and you're not learning. So that would be the last thing. And the one final question I'll throw out to you both today before we part ways is, where do you look for candidates? You mentioned, Anil, earlier that you found your first job on Twitter, which I think is pretty unique. Everyone's on these different platforms and are active in different ways. But I love the fact that you've both talked about personality and passion. And as a recruiter, I know that hiring managers are looking to social channels, even after through the offer stage and hiring stage. And I say to young, people just starting out, clean up your social channels. People are going to look at them if they're public. Like, don't assume they don't look, because they do now as part of the process. So I think the world's opened up as in terms of how to find a job and where you can. And LinkedIn is always an obvious one, but maybe you mentioned Twitter. Maybe you want to elaborate on that. So obviously you found a job that way, but as a hiring manager, where would you look for job seekers?
Yeah, look, I mean, my story was unique. I went through Twitter. I was passionate, like Sabrina said. I aligned with people that had the same passion. That's what led to my first job. But truly and honestly, like, your opportunity can come from anywhere. It could come from LinkedIn. It could come from Monster. It could come from Indeed. It could come from anywhere. Just make sure, I guess my piece of advice, because everybody's so connected and the world is so interconnected and everybody's sharing their life online, just make sure you're portraying out there what it is that you are, who you are. Make sure that image speaks to who you are as a person, because at the end of the day, like you said, employers are looking at all those different channels. In sales, we want to make sure that the person representing our brand can do so in a good way, and that's so important, to make sure that your social channels are cleaned up. And really and honestly, man, make those connections. It can happen anywhere. When I told people that I reached out to somebody on Twitter back in the day to, hopefully get a first job, everybody thought I was crazy, until 6 months later, when I had the badge on Parliament Hill and I was walking around as a staffer. So, be open, be ready, and just be eager to find that opportunity. It can come from anywhere. And as a hiring manager, I honestly would look anywhere. I would post everywhere I could. And if somebody just shot me a LinkedIn message and said, "Hey, I heard you had an opportunity," I'm more than happy to have a conversation with them.
Sabrina, final thought to you?
Yeah, just continuing on with what Anil was saying, is post it, even if you are private, when you're like on Instagram, like anywhere, because you just don't know who and what the connections they have. And if you're willing to have those conversations, you can post something, and then before you know it, a friend is saying, "Hey, I was just speaking to another friend and they're hiring." And then even if nothing works out, but it can continue moving forward. So like Anil said, you can be in a grocery store lineup and you can bump into someone, and before you know it, you're talking to someone. I asked too. It's like, "Hey, where are you working?" And you never know how it might turn around. So always have a smile. Yeah. Always have a smile on your face.
Yeah.
Because
you
never know.
I think the biggest thing in the job search is get used to rejection. And if you can't handle that rejection, then sales maybe isn't the place for you. Sales and marketing isn't necessarily the home if you can't take feedback and a few
Right.
doors closing before one opens.
Yeah, and you know what, these students, they should be, you know, but be kind to yourself. This is where we've gotten beaten up a couple of times. You get used to it, but then you also build your confidence out of that. So like we had admitted from the beginning, you know, we weren't this personality that we are today. So just remember that, you know, be kind to yourself from the beginning, but keep on pushing forward and know your value. Don't let anyone take that away from you. Know your value.
Absolutely. I think it's important, like Sabrina said, know who you are to you,
Mhm.
and be proud of who you are to you.
Mhm.
And that translates so beautifully in any work environment. And it just makes employers so much more attractive to you.
That's an amazing note to end on. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining today. Like I said earlier before we went live, we couldn't do this without people like yourselves giving up your time to speak to students and grads. You know, it's so valuable. We really appreciate it and wish you a great evening. Thank you everybody for joining in. And if you're listening to this as a recording and you have questions for myself or Neil or Sabrina, please reach out to me, Nicole@foodgrads.com. I can certainly reach out to them and have questions answered if you need to. And have a wonderful evening. Thank you again. Bye, everyone.